I saw in heaven another great and marvelous sign, 7 angels with the 7 last plagues, because with them God's wrath is completed. And I saw what looked like a sea of glass glowing with fire and, standing beside the sea, those who had been victorious over the beast and its image and over the number of its name. They held harps given them by God. The 7 last plagues are introduced as part of the final series of judgments that complete God's wrath during the apocalyptic narrative of Revelation. These plagues are poured out by 7 angels from 7 bowls, Revelation 16, and they represent God's righteous judgment on a rebellious world. The plagues include devastating events such as sores on those who worship the beast, the sea and rivers turning to blood, darkness, scorching heat, and massive earthquakes. The plagues are last because they signify the culmination of God's wrath, leading to the ultimate defeat of evil and the establishment of God's kingdom. The sea of glass is mentioned earlier in Revelation 4:6, where it appears as a serene, crystal-clear expanse before God's throne, symbolizing his purity, majesty, and transcendence. In Revelation 15 verse 2, the sea of glass is glowing with fire, indicating the intensity of God's judgment and the purification that comes through his righteous acts. The sea also serves as a symbol of chaos and opposition to God in biblical literature. Psalm 89 verse 9, Daniel 7. Its fiery appearance in this vision reflects the merging of judgment and glory, showing God's dominion over all forces of chaos and sin. And sang the song of God's servant Moses and of the Lamb, "Great and marvelous are your deeds, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, King of the nations. Who will not fear you, Lord, and bring glory to your name? For you alone are holy. All nations will come and worship before you, for your righteous acts have been revealed." After this I looked, and I saw in heaven the temple, that is, the tabernacle of the covenant law, and it was opened. Out of the temple came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues. They were dressed in clean, shining linen and wore golden sashes around their chests. Then one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls filled with the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever, and the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no one could enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. The heavenly tabernacle opened, verse 5. After this I looked, and I saw in heaven the temple, that is, the tabernacle of the covenant law, and it was opened. This verse directly references the tabernacle of the covenant law, recalling the Ark of the Covenant, which contained the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. This signifies that God's covenant and his moral law remain central and eternal, despite humanity's deviation. 7 angels with 7 plagues, verse 6. Out of the temple came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues. They were dressed in clean, shining linen and wore golden sashes around their chests. The angels emerge from the temple, highlighting that these judgments are rooted in God's holiness and justice. Their attire symbolizes purity and righteousness, reinforcing that these actions are not arbitrary, but in line with God's eternal covenant. The golden bowls of wrath, verse 7. Then one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls filled with the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever. The bowls signify the culmination of God's righteous judgment. The eternal nature of God is emphasized, who lives forever and ever, underscoring that his promises and his covenant endure beyond time. The glory of God fills the temple, verse 8. And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no one could enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. The smoke represents God's presence, much like at Mount Sinai when the law was given, Exodus 19 verse 18. The fact that no one could enter the temple reflects the gravity and holiness of what is taking place. God's covenantal justice is being fulfilled. This passage shows that God's covenant has never been abolished. Humanity, however, has often rejected or replaced divine laws with human constructs. God's covenant stands. The tabernacle of the covenant law in heaven confirms that God's commandments and promises remain eternal. The moral truths they represent, justice, mercy, and faithfulness, are timeless. Man-made laws replace God's law. Throughout history, humanity has often abandoned God's laws, creating systems based on personal or societal desires. This has led to corruption, injustice, and the devaluation of divine authority. God's justice is unchanging. Revelation 15 reminds readers that despite human rebellion, God's justice will prevail, fulfilling His promises and holding humanity accountable for rejecting His ways. Reaffirming the covenant, Revelation invites believers to align with God's eternal truth rather than man-made ideologies. The commandments, rooted in God's character, call for a relationship of love and obedience. Warning against rebellion. The plagues are a stark reminder of the consequences of replacing God's law with human arrogance. Hope in God's faithfulness, even amid judgment. The glory of God points to His ultimate plan of redemption and the restoration of all things. This passage ties the cosmic events of Revelation to the enduring relevance of God's covenant, showing His unwavering commitment to His promises and His ultimate justice. Until next post, Shalom.